Former President Trump's legal team has submitted its response to the Justice Department's attempts to halt a federal judge's order. Trump's attorneys state that they want the federal judge to continue to hold off the Justice Department from resuming its review of the records seized last month from Trump's Florida residence. Skylar Henry has more details.
Former President Donald Trump arrived in the Washington area Sunday evening, ostensibly to play golf. Meanwhile, his lawyers hammered out a response to the Department of Justice's request that the judge stay the part of her ruling preventing the government from reviewing documents taken during the search. Trump's team filed the response this morning, saying in what at its core is a document storage dispute that spiraled out of control. The government wrongfully seeks to criminalize the possession by the 45th president of his own presidential and personal records. In a court filing last week, the DOJ asked Judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, to restore their access to classified material seized in the search at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home last month. They argue that denying access to the material could stop them from finding any additional classified material being improperly stored, which they argue could put national security at risk.
If some of these documents involved human intelligence and that information got out, people will die. If there were penetration of our signals intelligence, literally years of work could be destroyed.
The Trump team responded to that request, saying there is no indication any classified records were disclosed to anyone, reiterating they were stored in a locked room at Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ argues that even if the judge proceeds with the appointment of a special master, that he or she should have a more narrow scope of work than what the judge had initially ordered. In the court filing, the DOJ said the special master should not review documents with classification markings and should not adjudicate claims of executive privilege.
There's only one executive who can assert the privilege, and that's the one who's the current executive, Joe Biden.
So far, neither the DOJ nor former President Trump's lawyers have agreed on who should be named the special master if the federal judge proceeds with appointing one, with both sides submitting a separate list of names they find acceptable to fill the role. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
And the DOJ has asked the judge to make her decision by September 15th. Well, the Kremlin is announcing that Russia will achieve all the goals of the special military operation in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry said over the weekend, following the success of Ukraine's counteroffensive, that the decision was made to regroup Russian troops in certain areas and redirect their efforts elsewhere. Now, officials say that military operations will continue until the initial goals are achieved. Around 25,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since the war in Ukraine started over 6 months ago. Well, time is running out to prevent a nationwide strike by freight railroad workers. Negotiators have reported some progress in the recent days, but those agreements are tentative and several major issues remain unsettled. A trade group estimates that a work stoppage could cost the U.S. economy as much as $2 billion a day. And industry analysts believe that Congress will intervene to prevent a strike, either by imposing a contract on the companies and unions or by extending the cooling off period. And while gas prices have fallen 25% from June's record highs, but Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning of pain to come at the pump. Yellen says that fuel costs could spike again this winter as the EU scales back its purchases of Russian oil. And she says the move is necessary to cut off funding for Russia's war in Ukraine, but it is likely to lead to increased demand and higher prices from other oil and gas suppliers. And U.S. consumers are expecting inflation to fall sharply in both the short and long term. Now, according to a new survey from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, numbers dropped for both 1- and 3-year inflation expectations. Now, as gas prices continue to fall down to a national average of $3.71 per gallon, that's from a peak more than $5 back in those record high June. Now, the survey, which measures consumers' expectations for overall inflation as well as prices for food, gas, housing, and education, it's one of 3 key inflation-related gauges to be released this week. And the Consumer Price Index is out tomorrow, followed by the Producer Price Index on Wednesday. And all 3 will be discussed by the Federal Reserve later this month as it weighs yet another interest rate hike to help combat inflation. Well, Visa says that it will join MasterCard and American Express in categorizing sales at gun shops separately. Now, purchases were previously classified as general merchandise. Those in favor of the new move say it will help authorities track suspicious sales of firearms and ammunition. But gun advocates have argued that flagging gun sales would unfairly target its industry, insisting that most sales do not lead to mass shootings. And while many of us enjoyed week 1 of the NFL season, some Miami Dolphins fans were in a hot mess. Take a look at this. 11 cars went up in flames outside the Dolphins season opener at Hard Rock Stadium because police say a tailgating fan left a hot barbecue grill under their car. Now, thankfully, no one was injured, but the vehicles, you can see, were not so lucky.